Okay, this time I'm recording. I can't even click record these days. Hi, everybody. We're back. Last episode series of stuff. We were working on what were we? It was like requirements gathering. We were talking about how to do those a little better, how to make the most use of time and such. I am vamping while I'm trying to find our podcast ideas. I think we had a couple of good ones. Oh, that was what those were for the next season, which those would be good. We talked about scope creep, a little bit
Definition.
on, go ahead.
Well, we did defining done in agile and supercharger focus.
Yep. We did focus. Let's see, which is basically dealing with an overwhelming task. Did we have anything that jumped out, or do you have anything that jumps out at you? Otherwise, I think I've got one to give us a start.
Not offhand, other than like I was thinking through the problem solving stuff that we did again, and I was really thinking, after we kind of looked at some of the data stuff and requirements the other day, I was looking at it and thinking, this is like the scientific method. Writing code is pretty much trial and error. You have an idea, you write code, you spit it out, you test. And it really does follow that scientific method. For some reason, that just kind of stuck in my head the last day or two. I don't know if it's really worth the topic, but it's just one of those where ways to kind of break it down, not necessarily just the SDLC or STLC, but just how to analyze, walk through the problem. I know we've talked about it a lot, and we may have talked through it to death for this season, but it's something, maybe we can bring it back up next season.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if we would do how we would do that one. Um, but that's actually the idea I had, was a little bit getting into sort of like a maybe a precursor into what we would do next season anyways, which was more of a, yeah, I'm trying to say, because it's really, I was getting into like doing, it's almost like having a daily challenge or something like that. It's just micro ways to get better. And we've talked about that a lot. But it's one that I don't think I have. And it was more the idea of like challenge yourself to, it's really like learn something new every day. And it's really, I think that's where I want to go with that. Let's see, it's a little bit, and I don't think we've covered this one yet in this season, or maybe in the past that we've spent that much time. It's how do you, when you're in a remote environment, when you're doing a remote job in particular, or doing a solopreneur or something like that, where you don't have a team around you, is like, how do you get better? How do because a lot of people, it's like, there's one thing that's like, hey, I can learn a programming language, but learning it the right way or the best way usually takes more than just like, reading something, or like, I can hammer out some problems in this. It gets a little bit more into what are best practices. How do I find best practices? It does go back to the things that we have sort of had as like a recurring theme, things like static code analysis and some of those kinds of things, or going to like OWASP or some of those places. But it's also like, how do I grow? How do I go from, okay, I know this, to now I'm doing it better or doing it right? Some of the sources for that. And that was what I was saying. It's a becoming a better developer. And it's something that's really probably not as much an issue when you're early on, because you're just drinking from the fire hose. There's always something new, but there is that point. Like, how do you get off the plateau? Once you've plateaued, now what do you do?
Yeah, and I think this is episode 23, so this would be a good point to kind of cover that, because we're kind of from the intro, beginning of the journey, the mid level. We've touched on some closer to the end tasks. This is kind of one like continuing to grow kind of thing. I like that.
Okay. Then we'll figure out how this works. Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing a season where we are going through the developer journey. We are building better developers. We are Developreneur. I am Rob Broadhead. I'm one of the founders of Developreneur. I'm also a founder of RB Consulting, where we do We help you with technology sprawl and all the pain regarding that. So we help you to automate, we help you to simplify, we help you to integrate all your systems to get that big sprawling thing you have down into a nice, lean, clean machine that allows you to just get your job done and not worry about the technology. Going with our sort of newish thing that we've got with a good thing, bad thing. I think I'll go ahead and throw mine out there real quick. Good thing is my youngest kids moved out of the house this weekend and we helped them move. Along with that was a bad thing because the first thing we did is we rented a trailer, and when we got there, we did not have the right size hitch. So somebody had to go back and get the bag of hitches basically so we could get the right size hitch for the trailer. So moral of the story is either check beforehand or bring your big bag of stuff, because you never know. Actually, you do know. If you don't bring it, you will need something in the bag. If you don't bring it, if you do bring it, then you probably are fine. So you might as well go that route. On the other side, that's got his big bag of tricks and so much more, is Mike. If you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike Malash. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we take test-driven development and apply it to help small to mid-sized businesses and clinicians build software with testing in mind to reduce the cost of software development. Good and bad. Good. I finally fixed the two gates we've had on the farm for the last 4 years. I had to had to get all the parts for it. The bad news is I had to make multiple trips to Lowe's to get multiple parts because I either didn't have the right clip or the wrong little clip was too big or too small for the little adapters to get the tension wire right.
Yeah, short follow up to that. When my oldest moved into his house, first time he got a house and moved into that, he knew he was truly adulting in that first weekend when we were moving him in. He had like 10 trips to Lowe's that day. He just kept going back. I was like, oh, I need to get this. I need to get that. I need to get. He's like, wow, I've like almost never been to this store. And now he's been there. Like, we told him, like, you're going to be there a lot. Just trust me. Moving on. This episode, we're going to talk about basically it's like getting off of the plateau. It's growing off of a plateau. And it really is where we have these situations where we, particularly when we're early on, either in our career or learning language or a new environment, you sort of, we'll call it, you drink from the fire hose. You're just like learning. Every time you get in there, there's something new you're learning, you're getting better. At some point, you sort of plateau. You're comfortable with it and you can use it. And maybe you're even what they would call like a power user or something like that, or very, a accomplished developer because you have a long, list of things that you can solve with that tool. But maybe you're not a guru or an expert or something because maybe you self-taught, or you've had a couple of lessons or, a couple of classes. Maybe you've gotten some sort of a certification or something like that, but not really like truly mastered that skill or technology. And that's where I want to talk about today. So what happens when you find yourself in that plateau? And what are some ways that we can do that? Now, one of them I've already mentioned is certifications. I have found certifications very often, particularly when there's we'll say like a family or a series of certifications within a technology. Those are very helpful. Yes, it's great on paper and you can say, hey, I'm certified and blah, blah, blah. But in a lot of cases, going through the process to be certified is in itself a really good learning opportunity. You probably know some level of what you're being certified on, but then there's going to be all these details. As an example, you can go back to, just pushing our own goods, but you can go back to some of our prior stuff. We actually have a whole series in YouTube that is getting a Python certification. And in doing so, I've been Python programming for quite a while, but going through the syllabus, there were several things that I just didn't use very often. So it was a really good way to explore all the pieces of that. Now, in my past experience in certifications, I will throw out extra props to actually there's two places. One was the Java series of certifications way back. One of the things that the certified developer was at the time, or certified architect, I can't remember what it was, but short story is, the certification process was a test plus building an application. So they said which walked you through, here's the requirements, here's what you need to do, here's some things that you have to do in part of, making this application work. So it made sure that you, for example, your database was not a database, it was a binary store. So you had to be able to work with that, and you had to put data in and pull it back out, things like that. Those application type certifications are awesome. Another one is really anything I've touched, and I haven't gotten all deep into it, but any of the Amazon Web Services certifications. And there's, I think, something like 4.2 billion different certifications there for all their services. But the certification process, learning it, understanding the syllabus even, and just walking through all the features, every time I've done that it was really an educational experience. So those are great ways to move off of a plateau, is basically push yourself to almost go back into the academic world a little bit through certifications, or maybe you get like a mastering blah blah language, mastering Ruby on Rails or something like that kind of book, and almost read it like almost page from front to back, instead of using it as a reference. Or maybe even like if they have something that's like step 1, step 2, step 3, learn it in 30 days, is actually go through those and really dig into the things that you don't use as much. And this could be, or maybe it is as simple as say, I've never used multi-threading in this language. I want to see if I can do that. I have never, I don't know, done like bit level graphics in this. So I want to go try that. If you can think of something that's a problem you solved somewhere else, then maybe solving that in this new language will help you grow. Now, the one other thing I wanted to throw out before, and then I'm going to throw it to Michael, is, because we do this all the time, is pointing to the step at a day kind of approach. One of the things you can do with this, instead of maybe having a side project or going into certification, is just it goes back to almost like a personal code review. Take a look at stuff that you've done in that language, pick a function, a class, or something like that, and then review it with an eye towards, is there a possibility that I could do this differently? And it may be as simple as take that piece of code and throw it into, like, this is actually a good use of AI or something, like take that code and throw it into a chat GPT or something like that and say, how else, what's a different way to write this code? Or what would be a better way to write this code? Or something along those lines. Because what you'll end up finding often is that you're going to have we'll call it your crutch. And the thing I think of most often is in the world of Java and their collections, is there's a lot of different collections, and there is a specific strengths and weaknesses to each of them. But most of us have the one that we fall back on. It's the one that we're most comfortable with, the one that we use the most often, and it may not be the best. And so if it's something you haven't used very often, something like this, where you're going back to that code review, you're pushing, maybe you use like a static code analysis tool, or look up like best practices or something like that with that language or that environment, then you may find a couple of things that you haven't used, and that will allow you to, kick it up a notch basically, and maybe move off of that plateau. Now, I know I hit a couple of things sort of lightly and maybe the one deeply, but now I want to throw that over to you, Mike. And what are some of the things that you do, and some of the ways that you move yourself off of that plateau when you find it?
So I liked how you touched on certification, kind of self-learning, digging into the current existing technology. So I'm going to keep us in academia at the moment and kind of build a little bit off your certification. So I, like Rob, agree that certifications are a jumping point to kind of get you started if you're not sure where to go within your current technology or language. However, I'm not a huge test taker person, so I don't do very well with standardized tests. It takes me twice as long to prepare for those exams. However, and that's where I'm going to go with this, is keeping it within academia. If you want to expand your knowledge of something or learn something new, go at it in the mindset of teaching it to someone. So a lot of the ways where I learned something new, and I did this a lot over the last decade or so, is if I needed a skill or I wanted to expand a skill, I would either start writing courses to try to teach myself how to do this right. Like, how is this actually done? So I kind of went in with that biblical reference mindset, where I did all my research on the particular topic. Then I tried to present it in a way that I could actually explain it to someone. It's harder than you think to take something you've done for 20 years and try to teach it to someone. That's when you really start getting into those details of, well, I know how to do this, but why am I doing this? And sometimes that why gets you into areas where, oh, well, this is actually better. Let me go learn this. And then you find it's peeling back that onion. It's like, oh, every time you find something new, it triggers something else. You can go in a different direction. Now, that has allowed me to write boot camps and training materials. But what the other thing is that this has led me to do is being the entrepreneurial mindset that I am, is there are times where it's like, I am very good at writing software. I'm very good at building systems. However, I may not know JavaScript really well. I do, but say we'll take JavaScript as an example. So it's been, a while since I've dipped my toe in JavaScript, but say I wanted to go do something with a newer JavaScript library. The other thing you could do is go find a job on like freelancer.com or one of these other sites, find something, a project, a topic, an idea in that technology that kind of is, linear or parallel to your path, but pushes you to go learn something new, doing what you're doing today, and you can build your skill set. Not only that, but you may find out that this is a better technology. So maybe I need to start shifting my skill set over to this, getting me out of this comfort zone and continuously pushing me forward. Now, there's pros and cons to both of those. But again, if you're not kind of that outgoing person, the certifications might be a better way to go about it. However, if you are more outgoing, finding jobs or finding projects, or the one thing we haven't touched on are hackathons. Different communities and areas, they do have hackathons. It's where you go in and you kind of join as a team or an individual. They give you some problems and you try to work through them in a limited time set. Now, you don't have to go to these groups. You can do them personally. You can go find online little hackathon topics, but that's another way to kind of jumpstart your mindset as to where you want to go with this current technology, or just push yourself to see what you can really do without having to sit there with AI or Google all day to try to assist you with your coding.
Now, there's a couple of great ideas that came out of that. I'm glad that you put it that way. First one is back many years ago. I was at a consulting company that actually no longer exists, and one of the things that they came up with was, it wasn't, I don't think it was paid or anything like that, but what they would do is if there was a new technology out there, and this is long enough ago that like the new technology, there was like Delphi and the small talk, it was Visual Age. I think it was IBM's series of IDEs. And this is before Java. And one of the things they would do is they'd say, hey, we will get, this is, how the company sort of rewarded you, is they say, hey, we'll get you the enterprise version of that tool. And then what you'll do is you take it and you build a tutorial, exactly like Michael said. And it usually, the way it was set up is we sort of it's really a template of, you want something that highlights the strengths of the environment, but then is something that's moderately useful. So it was usually something along the lines of like maybe a miniature, like a low end CRM application or something like that, where it's just like, I want to track some data. And it's like, hey, so I can connect to a database. I can pull data out. I can do some basic interaction with that. I can do some modification. I can display stuff, maybe do a report, have a reporting tool or something like that. But one of the things that we did with this, these were all back in the day, this is when they were all desktop applications. And one of the things that we would do is it would be walking through the polishing side of it. So it would be things like going through and making sure all the help, like the micro help showed up, and making sure tab orders are right. And all these things that you can sort of forget about depending on where you're at in an application. So it really did get into some of the nitty gritty details that, depending on what you do, helps you, round out your skills. Another thing that it reminded me of, as Michael was talking about, is there's a thing called, it's called the Little Lisper. It was a way to learn the Lisp programming language. And the way they presented it was they started with, it was always a question. How do I do X in Lisp? And what they did is they used that to build your entire knowledge. So the first thing was like, how do I split a string in Lisp? How do I combine strings in a list? And it'd be just a question. And then here's what it looks like. And this is how it works. And that was how you did, you knew how to do all your cars and your cooters and all those others that it did to create these really complicated things. And it started very basic. And I've seen some other books along the way that are sort of like that. They're more like a problem solving guide with JavaScript or something like that. And those are the things that, one, there's some great books and tutorial paths out there. Two, this is another thing where AI does become interesting, is because you can just ask AI, how do I do X with Y? And then use that and then go do it. Like, definitely test it. Don't just take it and say, oh, now I know, because you don't know, but take that, run it, go run that code. And you're going to find probably a different way of doing it. You may find a new library. You may find something that's different because they're on a different version. There's a lot of stuff that can come out of that. And that whole academia side of it, because it really does come down to, it's like we're trying to ask ourselves, we're trying to push ourselves. And that's really what you get, is it's like you don't know what you don't know. And so this is where you have to stretch a little bit and get, okay, where might I not know it? What applications am I usually doing? And what are maybe some other applications out there where I'm not using it? Or as Michael said, sometimes you're going to find something that's like a tangential technology. So there's a lot. If you're doing web applications, that's a great one, where maybe you're building a Java web application. But one of the things you want to do is you want to get better at the front end stuff. So maybe you spend some time within that and you start playing around a little bit. Like maybe you go and understand how CSS and those classes work a little bit better. Or maybe you go into JavaScript and you look a little bit more like, well, what if I, instead of using the back end, did this on the front end? What would that look like? Those kinds of things are really going to help you grow. And I'm going to toss that back to you, because it looks like you've had that sparked a couple ideas on your side as well.
Yeah, so I don't want to get too far off topic, but one of the big things that comes to mind when you get kind of in these ruts or kind of very comfortable, do code reviews, look at what you're doing, and instead of asking AI, can you write your own code generators to generate some of your project template boilerplate code for you to jumpstart your next project, or to even streamline your current project? These are great ways to figure out best practices or even current practices if technology has changed in the last decade or even a year from when you started. The flip side of that, and a little selfless plug here, is testing. Take your code, if you're not writing testing, start thinking about user stories and how you're writing the code. How is the code being built? If you think of the stories for how it's being built, if you're just writing code all the time, take a step back and try to write the user story flow or the project flow for the entire project. Start at the beginning, go to the end. You may never have been through that process, and that is a great learning experience, not only to understand what it is that your application is doing, what it is that you're doing, but also all the different layers involved with the software development of that application. So you may even pique interest in, oh, I like software requirements gathering. Ooh, maybe I'll be a project manager, or I like being a business owner, a manager. You see all that by going through this process, because you might even be in a rut. You might not necessarily be comfortable, but you're bored, or you're kind of in a rut and you're like, I don't know if this is for me. Look at doing something like that. It might reinvigorate you in the current field or even in the company you're at to go, hey, okay, now if I go learn project development or software requirements gathering, now I can kind of pivot or move into a different direction within my field.
And that really is, besides moving off of your plateau because you want to become a better developer, I think that is another thing, is that you don't want to get bored. You don't want to get too comfortable where you're at, because you're not going to be growing in that situation. If you coast, if you're in a rut, you're probably not moving forward. If you're coasting, you're probably not growing. And if you're not growing unfortunately you're dying, because that's the way technology is. There is always going to be, there's new libraries, there's new versions, there's new features, there's new services, there's new environments, there's new everything out there. And every time there's a new technology, there's probably a new way to maybe look at integrating with that, working with that, leveraging that. And so those are the things that, besides just growing in a technology, I think are going to help us so we can grow more broadly and honestly continue to be excited every day when we start work. Hopefully this has excited you enough that you send us an email, info@developreneur.com. Let us know what you're thinking about, what you like, what you don't like. What are some of the topics you would like to hear from us? What are some questions you have? What are some good and bad things that have happened to you? We're happy to share and hear about it and all that goodness. We are wrapping up soon this season, and we will be jumping into season 23, which is just, again, every time I think about how far we've gone with this, is crazy. I think we're going to be topping, I think in the next season, we'll be topping episode 800. We're just like, we're cruising along here. But we would love to have feedback from you guys. You can leave us comments here. You can leave them, whether here is on YouTube or whether it's out wherever you get your podcasts. Out on X, you can follow us at Developreneur. You can give us, we have contact forms on developreneur.com. You can check out school.developreneur.com, and you can check out some of the courses we have and some of the places that we have gone a little deeper. These are some of the things that Michael talked about, where we've moved off of that plateau and explored some of the things that we can do to help you guys as well as ourselves. As always, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Bonus material. What you got?
Java for Visual Age. I actually taught that.
I think that was the language that killed Visual Age. I remember it got there, and then not too long after that, it died. But that was when
what they did was they ripped out all the UI stuff, moved that to the WebSphere, and then open source the base as Eclipse.
Yep. Yeah, basically it split into a couple different things at the time. But yeah, those are the heydays when Java first came out. That first, I can't remember, was it 6 months, maybe a year, and everybody and their brother had an IDE for Java. There was all of these things. Some of them really cool, and some of them really sucked. But there's also, IDEs have come a long way in that. Gosh, it's been 30 years, I guess now. Basically, you're talking mid 90s. Yeah, Visual Age was actually an interesting one. We were one of the big buyers. That company I was talking about, they were one of the big buyers into Java. We had Visual Age for Java. The only problem is it was slow as Christmas. It was so painfully slow to get anything done with it. And we had Visual Age, Smalltalk, Visual Age, Java, and Visual Age C++. I think those were the three that we had. And the C++ one was actually sort of quick, but the other two, it was neat. I always loved Smalltalk. Pure object oriented. It was really cool, but the Visual Age stuff just sucked. It was just way, 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 way too slow. So yeah, bonus everybody. Go, you want to go Google that. That's probably out there somewhere. Yeah, it's sort of interesting how it did grow into, sort of split into WebSphere and Eclipse, and it's still out there somewhere. There's I can't remember. They had another version of it that sort of popped up for a little bit and then disappeared again. I think they did call it Visual Age for J2EE or something like that, and then it died a horrible death because Eclipse and some of the Eclipse variants were so much better, and still are, really.
Well, I think IBM still owns that, so that might be a part of the Web Studio or WebSphere Studio that you buy with them. Because I know they still give that away with the AS400s or iSeries now. You actually get the full development suite if you have an iSeries. And I think it just comes with that. Otherwise, you got to pay for it. I will say this, though. If you had Berlin JBuilder, that was probably the best UI toolkit for building desktop applications, because it actually had the no grid, so you could actually put components wherever the hell you wanted to. It wasn't center, right? So that was awesome.
I built my first couple of Java desktop apps on JBuilder. That was I think that was the thing that was what I was on for a long time until Eclipse came around and I got sold on Eclipse.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
for
that
those
was
of
right.
you, if you do a lot of Java development, you might like IntelliJ. Eclipse is still out there, but I'll tell you the Spring STS Eclipse build is probably the most stable. And if you do a lot of Spring, I recommend that. I've tried it with IntelliJ. IntelliJ has some nice bells and whistles, but it doesn't play nice with a lot of the Spring libraries. Um, but I'm dabbling in visual code, still same kind of thing. Honestly, if you are a pure Java developer, look at Eclipse, look at Spring, and IntelliJ is great for those of you because I guess that's what they're teaching in college these days. So those are kind of like the top three tiers. I just like Eclipse because it has all these plugins in the marketplace. You can pretty much do almost anything you want in Eclipse, kind of like Notepad++, or even a lot of the command line interface utilities that come with Linux. So it's one of those where it's kind of a Swiss Army knife if you need it, or it can be plain vanilla if you need it to be plain vanilla.
And that's where I've got like Visual Studio Code has grown to that. It used to not be there, but especially in the last few years, I've seen it's. I did a course for some of the guys. We did building our own better developers in our company earlier today, where we were just walking through Visual Studio Code. There's some other tools out there that are really good, like the JetBrains tools and stuff like that. But just using it, free plugins or in extensions that they've got. It is amazing what you can get out of those things. And it's honestly, Visual Studio Code is really lightweight. So it's become one that I use. If I'm not going to use a paid IDE, which I've got a couple of those, if I'm heavy in something, then I'm using like a pro version of an IDE. If it's something else, I'll use Visual Studio Code, particularly if it's like things that I don't, that I'm in here and there. Like I may use it to do, especially like, HTML and JavaScript, or if I'm doing some sort of a command line, scripting language or something like that. You're going to find a plugin for it. It's really good. Eclipse does have those. It's just sometimes you end up getting with a little bit, big and fat Eclipse. And like Michael said, if you're doing Spring development, I would use the Spring STS. I don't even do the plugins. I just go straight to their version of Eclipse and then go from there. That being said, I think we'll wrap this one up. There's some like weird bonus stuff that was a little off topic, but you have that as always. There's so many ways to contact us. Bonus material, like super secret stuff for you guys. Next season, we're going to talk about like how to be a better developer. It's going to be each episode. And I think we already decided on it. If not, sorry, Mike, we just decided on it. Each episode is going to be something actionable, like a challenge or something along those lines of like, here's some things you can do to become a better developer. All these little things. It's going to be things that he does, that I do, and it's going to be things that you do. If you guys want to send us something, send us some information, send us something at info@developreneur.com. Leave us some comments or something like that. However you want to reach out. We would love to hear from you as well. What are some of the tips, the tricks, the tactics that you use to become a better developer? And we're going to probably we're going to find ways to turn these into challenges and sort of gamify it a little bit, but that's what's coming up next in the next season. And, it's probably 8-10 episodes, something like that. But I want to throw that out there as sort of like a super secret extra bonus material for you. So go think about that and then come back here in a couple of days and check us out for the next episode. Have yourself a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.